What I learned is successful people are willing to do what unsuccessful people are not. So I'm successful because I'm willing to do what you ain't willing to do. I'm willing to get up early. I'm willing to stay late. I'm willing to do that over again. And when I don't feel like doing it, I get up and I do it again. And that difference between me and you. I'm gonna keep going when I don't feel like going. You wanna go as long as it's comfortable and convenient. But then you wonder why you ain't got what I got. You ain't going where I'm going.
Welcome to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Wealth. I am your host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. How you doing today, brother?
Hey, always blessed and highly favored.
Hey, man, it's always excellent to hear. And we want to thank you all for tuning in to another righteous and holy episode of this podcast. And today, we're going to entitle this podcast, Pay Now or Pay Later. And we're talking about the taxes and the structure of aligning your plan and making sure that what you collect from your investments, that you make sure that you take care of what Uncle Sam, so to speak, desires from you or requires from you, because taxes are a requirement.
Yes.
We cannot avoid them. But here's the thing, with the proper plan, you'll have the proper knowledge of when you will have to pay the taxes, how you will have to pay the taxes. And so you will understand when you look at your account, what is actually yours and what actually has to go to the IRS. And that's very important, because sometimes when, just on a, cellular level, small level, when you collect the check and you get paid, something that I used to do at younger was when I got a job and they told me I was going to get paid this certain rate. All right, and then I get the check. I calculated my hours, and I'm expecting that full amount of my calculation. Yes. But, I was introduced to the taxes early that, all right, the cut of the taxes came out up front. Yes. Then in my later years of my current employment of being a barber, then now I have to pay later, right? My taxes don't get cut. I don't get a check. I collect my money up front, and then I have to ensure that I calculate my funds correctly to make sure that I have enough money set aside to pay the taxes consistently. Over the years that I've been doing this, I can't say that I have been as consistent as I need to be, because that's a hard thing to do, but steadily striving to get better. I'm steadily running my race. I'm trying to make 100, right? As I think about the old song we used to sing in the church, I'm running trying to make 100 because 99 and a half won't do. And that's true, because with God wants you to reach 100, doesn't want you to cut any corners, doesn't want you to fall slack. But then also here on this earth, when it deals with our finances, the tax man comes, and the tax man wants 100%. Absolutely. And if the tax man feels as though you're cheating, they're gonna send an audit to do another evaluation, even after you feel as though you paid them their 100% of what you owe. So we want to make sure that as we move about, we want to give you some tools and some information for you all today, that you are well informed of how to handle your retirement accounts, your IRA, and to make sure that your tax plans are structured correctly. Because with all plans, there are different effects that happen to your plan, right? Your financial plan. We have inflation that comes about. We have changes in Congress votes and whoever is sitting in the White House and what type of plan they want to have when it comes to finances. And those percentages change often. And you have to make sure that you are abreast of what is going on, because ignorance to the law is not an excuse.
Absolutely.
Ignorance to the law is not an excuse. And I've tried to use that in my younger years. And Wilbert, it never worked.
Yes. Well, you know what? Somebody told me a long time ago, there's two things to guarantee to your life. You're going to pay taxes and you're going to die. Now, you don't know when and where you're going to pass away, but you're going to pay these taxes, one way or another. Either you're going to pay them out your pocket, or they're going to sit you down and they're going to pay them with your time. So you decide how you going to pay them taxes, but you will pay one way or the other. So, while we're here, and I'm always glad, obviously, to be back, for another episode, and, always strive to be righteous and holy.
Yes, sir.
Trying to get better every day, and, understanding that, everyone has a silent partner in their retirement account. Whether they choose to have it or not, you have a silent partner. And the problem is you don't know how much that silent partner is going to take, out of your retirement account. So it's always good to understand the not just the how much, but the why and the when and all those things, because our tax code is constantly changing. But I tell people to, make sure you have a plan and you constantly review that plan, and make sure you have your CPA professional, make sure you have, your financial advisor, because there's things you can do to mitigate your risk if you plan for it. You can reduce, the tax liability if you plan for it. You can understand when to take the distribution and when not to take the distribution. You can understand how, your different pots of money are going to be affected by the income. What's the difference between capital gains and income taxes? What opportunities generate, income taxes versus capital gains. Do you understand, when, that your Social Security is taxable up to a certain extent based on your income tax. Your 401ks, your IRAs, those are taxable as ordinary income. Whereas if you invest in the market, in an after-tax brokerage account, you pay capital gains. If you invest into a Roth account, of course, guess what? That money is tax-free. So, that's the biggest difference. A lot of times people don't understand it. They say, should I do the Roth? Should I do my regular 401k? I said, well, it depends. It depends on your situation. A Roth doesn't give you the tax deduction up front, but allows the money to grow tax-free on the back end. With the traditional, 401k and IRA and 403b and TSP and 457, you do get the initial tax break up front. And that's what we all like. We like the immediate gratification of the tax deduction that we get by putting the money in, not understanding that, guess what? The IRS and the United States government is expressing the art of delayed gratification in you doing so, because they understand we don't want the $100 a month, the taxes off of that. We don't want the taxes off of $500 a month that you're saving into your retirement account. We want to wait until you work for 30, 40 years and that account has grown and multiplied and become $500,000. Now, when you retire, you have to start taking that income back. And obviously it's a much larger amount than that $500 you initially contributed. Now we want the tax benefits because they are expressing and operating under the art of delayed gratification. And they are preying on the fact that we're going to operate under the same premise, but from the other end of it. We want to have it now. We like Burger King. We want it, my way. My way or the highway is how we want to operate, and not understanding that when we look at our financial situation and our economy as a whole, you have to ask yourself, how does the government pay to stay in business? And how do things operate? How do our roads get built? What is the infrastructure cost, and how are these things funded? Well, the primary source is what? Through your tax dollars. So we see a lot of things going on, a lot of buildings being built, a lot of new infrastructure needs to take place. We're hearing all this information about, the way the technology is pushing data centers, and we're going to have to make changes maybe to our, waterworks and our power companies, and all these things are going on, right? Because there's going to be enough energy and water to cool these centers and all these different things. That means that there's going to be some debt that's going to have to be raised. And when we look at, our country consistently staying in wars and rumors of wars, and wars cost. And we've seen just in the last year and a half, we've been into it with and involved in several different wars. We can go back to Russia and Ukraine. We weren't directly involved in it, but we were related to it. There was some compensation that was provided from us to Ukraine. There was some compensation provided from us to Israel. Now we're directly in conflict with I read. So,
Yeah.
we can see that, guess what? There's some costs. We've seen the billions of dollars that has been spent. We're talking about probably $400 billion that has been spent just in this situation with us dealing with Iran. Well, who has to pay that $400 billion bill? Well, that's going to be us. So if I'm constantly running up a tab and I'm looking and saying, you know what? My bill getting bigger and bigger, but I might need to go back to my employer and ask them for a raise in order for me to pay off this bill a little bit sooner. How does the U.S. government give themselves a raise? They raise taxes. Because they say, you know what, man, we got a bill that's sitting over here that's going to come due.
Yeah.
And somebody got to pay it. Well, who is the somebody?
Us.
The United States citizens. So understanding that we're watching our debt increase, and it's increased tremendously over the last several years. Well, in order for us to be able to maintain financial solvency, there's going to have to be an increase in tax revenue at some particular point in time. So I can be under the assumption that more than likely in the future, are taxes going to go up or are taxes going to go down? More than likely, they're going to have to go up. We've already seen them go up over the past couple of years. We've seen a 2% increase in the tax rate. We've seen some inflationary changes, happen. So because the tax rate is going up and we're looking like, man, I couldn't afford the old tax rate. Now I'm getting hit with the new tax rate. And chances are, guess what? In 4 years from now, what would the tax rate need to be in order to offset the debt that's being added to the economy right now? Because we're paying the tax rate based on what the debt used to be. Think about what the tax rate is going to have to be based on the debt that we accumulated.
Yeah.
Because there's always a cost to be paid. There's always a cause and effect. We enter into a war, well, guess what? The effect of that war is going to be usually raising our tax base because we have to pay back that debt. So just with the understanding of things that are going on around us is why I always tell people you gotta be working with professionals, because if you don't calculate what the tax ramifications could be, the same way you could ignore what inflation could do to a portfolio, you can really set yourself up for disaster. You'll be thinking you have one thing when the whole time you really got another. You'll be thinking that your portfolio is going to give you $35,000 a year in retirement, when after it really is going to give you $28,000 a year in taxes. And I give people just a simple analysis. I say, okay, well, that's people all the time. I says, $1 million is a lot of money. Yeah, it's a pretty good deal of money. But if you got $1 million in a retirement account, and they say, qualified retirement account, and you retire, and you work with a lot of these different people that say, you know what, you're going to operate off the 4% rule. That's what a lot of these so-called advisors like to tell you. We're going to operate off the 4% rule. Well, 4% of $1 million is $40,000. That's your annual income from $1 million in order for you not to run out of money. And people are like, oh, I got $1 million. Like, yeah. We got to think about 20 plus years of life. So when we break that down, that 4% goes to 40,000 off of $1 million. And you say, okay, well, 40,000 plus I get some Social Security. Okay, I can live on 60, 65,000. Okay, yeah, that sounds good, right? Until you factor in, you got to pay income tax on that 40,000, right? So that 40,000 is not 40,000. That 40,000 is really more like 32,000. So now that's $8,000 that just disappeared out of your income that you weren't anticipating. Then you think about your Social Security. Well, I still got my Social Security. Oh, yeah, you do. But that's going to be taxed as well based on your income rate. So, do you have a part-time job? Are you working here? Do you have a pension? We got to have all this income to be able to determine what your actual tax rate is going to be. So we don't often factor out and think about the end in the beginning. And this is why I tell people how much wealth advisor, the way we plan is we plan for the end in the beginning. We want to plan for how much money is going to hit your hand at the end of the day, not put ourselves in a position where we're only thinking about how much money we can grow into this account, because it's not always the biggest number that becomes the most valuable. Because we ask people all the time, I say, well, would you rather have $1 million in a brokerage account? I'm sorry, in a retirement account, or would you rather have $900,000 in a brokerage account? It's like, well, I want the $1 million. That's $100,000 more. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. Until we factor in the taxes. And I would say, you think, okay, you're in a 22% tax rate. So by the time you net out that $1 million, that $1 million now is really worth, just say for round number, we're gonna say 800,000.
Mm-hmm.
Is 800,000 more than the 900,000 you're gonna have in the brokerage account? Now all of a sudden, you realize sometimes less is more. Now you understand the value and importance of maybe putting a little money into that Roth IRA. So for the people on the job, that's why I tell people, you got to start doing retirement plan at day one, because there are a lot of employers that have matching contributions, not just for their 401k, but also for the Roth 401k option that some of them provide. So if you can get the matching contribution into the Roth account, or you have the ability to participate in a Roth account, at that particular point in time, it behooves you maybe to push some of your funds there and not be so caught up on, let me just get the deduction now. Because at the end of the day, most people are operating and utilizing, and our government is utilizing most people as a payday loan company. And people are like, man, what you mean?
Yeah.
I say, for most people, they get a tax refund back come tax time. And they wait for their $2,000 to $5,000 to come back come tax time. What you're really getting back is money that you prematurely gave to the government, that you overpaid them. But you just gave them an interest-free loan for pretty much a year. So they will take your money out your check every pay period. And then when you turn around and did your taxes, you realize, wow, you overpaid. You're due to get $2,500 back. But you don't get any interest on your $2,500. You simply get that $2,500 back. So imagine for the people who operated this way for the last 30 years. Let's just say you got $3,000 back for the last 30 years. Well, if you factor in time value of money and you factor in that total amount of money you would have gotten back, you're talking about probably over $500,000 to probably $750,000 in value that was lost on that money. Because if I had my $3,000 a year that you was getting me back in in my tax refund, and I was able to have that $3,000 and I was able to invest that $3,000 into my Roth account every year versus paying it to the government. Over 30 years now, I've put in $90,000 plus 30 years of growth and accumulation, compounding over and over and over. We're talking about a significant amount of money. We're talking about high six-figure money. Well, guess what? You missed out on all that because you were giving a free payday loan to the government. So this is why it's important to not just work with someone who's processing your taxes, but to speak with someone who can maybe help you with tax planning, tax preparation and structure, tax strategy. Because all CPAs and tax strategists are not created equally. Just because someone can file your taxes don't mean that they should be doing your taxes. Just the same way, just because somebody can invest your money don't mean they should be investing your money. What kind of experience do they have in actually doing so? So those are the conversations that we have to start having, because we get excited to get money back, but in reality, they just give me back what they owe.
Wow. So what we want everybody to understand, and what we're talking about now in this show titled Pay Now or Pay Later, is that you need full knowledge of how your finances truly work. Even on your job, you need to have an understanding of how you have filled out all of your paperwork and how your taxes are being cut and how it affects your future. And in order to do so, you need to make sure that you have the right types of conversations. That's why we come here week after week, to employ you to get wise counsel. And the wise counsel that we promote is Hamilton Wealth Advisors. Take the time, visit the website, hamiltonwealthadv.com. Set up your consultation today if you have not done so. Call us, and the team at Hamilton Wealth Advisors will make sure that you have full knowledge of how your finances work and how they can grow to make you who you need to be in the sight of God. And we'll be right back after this commercial break. Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Wealth. I am your host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. And today, our show is entitled Pay Now or Pay Later. We're talking about how to make sure that you have your finances structured correctly to understand your tax burdens, however that may look for you, and what you have in your IRA and retirement accounts, investment accounts, so forth and so on. And what we've talked about so far, I want to reiterate something, or rather state something and to help us out, is that when we're talking about this, we're not trying to stoke fear in anyone, right? But more so to give you the wisdom and the understanding and knowledge that you need to make a wise decision. In Luke 14:28, when Jesus talks about counting the cost, when you count the cost, it's not that you count the cost so that you have fear that you don't go ahead and bill. No, you count the cost so that you bill properly, so that you sit down and have a full understanding of where you are going and how you need to structure yourself and plan things in order to make sure that you get what it is that you desire. We all desire to have wealth. We desire to have retirement. Even if many of us have not planned for it, we do want it. We want to be taken care of financially for the rest of our lives, no matter how long our lives are extended to, because we don't know how long we're going to live, but all of us do want to live a life that's healthy, wealthy, and prosperous, however many years God gives us. And in order to do that as well, you need finances. And there's no reason to give away more than what needs to be paid. Absolutely. And that's what we're talking about today, is understanding that, yes, you're going to pay now or pay later, but when that payment happens is determined on how well you make your plan. Who do you speak to about where you are and what you have and where you desire to be? As Mr. Hamilton stated in the last segment, Hamilton Wealth Advisors begins with the end in mind of, okay, where do we want to be when retirement comes for you? And what does that look like for you? Understanding that this is not a cookie cutter planning. No, but it's tailor-made for each person that comes into the offices of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, that because everybody's situation is different, right? Everybody has different employers. Everybody has different desires. Some people, they want to keep it simple and plain. Mm-hmm. Some people don't want a life of extravagance of any kind. Some people are just fine with, hey, if I get this house that I'm living in right now paid off, and I have enough money to have a decent car and be able to feed myself well, I am happy and content there. Yeah. And then there are others that, yes, they want to keep that house, but then they have a dream house that they want to build and they want to retire in, and they want to have a beach home, or they want to travel the world, but in order to do those things, everybody needs to have an understanding of how much money I need to have to do that. And then also understand that at no matter what age you are, your relationship with the IRS never dies. We can never divorce
Yes.
the IRS. We didn't voluntarily marry them. It was involuntary.
Absolutely.
Once we were born, and you're not going to be able to voluntarily get out of the relationship. Why? Because, as Wilbur stated earlier, government debt, finances, all of these things, we are the currency. People are the currency for the United States government. And the debt is rapidly growing. And every time debt grows, that means that when we try to go and get loans, the cost goes higher and higher. The cost of vehicles goes higher. And then based on the wars and what's going on causes costs to be higher. But when we sit down and we count those costs, then we know how we can make our plan go and end up being what we need it to be. How can we bring our plans to fruition is important. But understand what 2 Timothy chapter 1 says, that look, God has not given us the spirit of fear. All right. So don't be scared. Read 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 7 to constantly remind yourself that you have power, you have love, and you have a sound mind. And the sound mind comes from getting wise counsel. And so that's why we want to thank you all for tuning in to Closing the Gap podcast, because we strive to give you the truth about wealth. And that truth is rooted and grounded in the word of God, because we know without a shadow of a doubt that all that we are and all that we have has come from God. And God desires that we be great stewards over the resources that God has blessed us with. God does not give us things just to sit on them, but no, God gives us these things so that we are taken care of, and then also, Wilbur, that we can take care of the kingdom of God. And that's what we strive to do here. You all are a part of God's kingdom, and God has, charged us, Wilbert and myself, to speak truth to you all, to tell you about your finances, to give you the wisdom that God has endowed upon us. We are not striving to gatekeep anything, but we are open books. And there's only so much that we can give you over the airwaves. And so that's why we ask that you set the consultation with Hamilton Wealth Advisors. There's no fee to set the consultation up. And we know that, even Wilbur, from some of the meetings that we've had recently, right, how things are changing. Everybody is charging or trying to charge now to even sit down and talk. But here with Closing the Gap podcast, Hamilton Wealth Advisors, New Grace Covenant Church, we're a little old school, I say, right? We're a little old school where we don't mind having the conversation and giving you the information that we have to do business with you and to have you become a part of our community, because we know that what God has done for us over the years, God has blessed us tremendously and is continuing to bless us. And through the blessings that God gives us, we strive to be a blessing for somebody else. And so we hope that this podcast is constantly blessing you, but also understand that to get the fullness of the blessing, we need to sit down and talk.
Yeah. It's the question is not, will you pay?
Mm-hmm.
It's when and at what rate.
Mm-hmm.
Like always old saying and say, you got to pay to play.
Yeah.
And that's the name of the game here. The more successful you are, financially, the more you have to be aware, because more than likely, the more tax you're going to probably have to pay. My dad told me something a long time ago when I started working and started making a little bit of money. He said, hey, as long as you're making money and you make it more, you're going to have to pay more. So go ahead and get comfortable, get used to it. He said, that's a part of it. I said, man, I'm going to have to figure something out. I said, I don't want us to be paying more to be paying more. So, let me find some professionals, some people I work with, see if there's a workaround. Let me see if there's some tax codes that I can study and learn and utilize. And that's why we have a tax code.
Yeah.
That's why there are CPAs and, tax strategists and professionals. This is why these people are employed and are available, is because there's opportunities that can be utilized to your benefit to reduce your tax obligation and liability. But if you don't know these opportunities exist, if you don't know the tax code, then you miss out on these opportunities. And all too often in our community, because we're not working with professionals, we miss out on opportunities to reduce our liability, to reduce those payments, so we can put ourselves in a better situation where we can keep more of what we're working so hard to achieve. So, I don't know anybody under the sound of my voice that's wouldn't like to keep more of their money. But saying you want to keep more is one thing. Picking up the phone and calling and reaching out to a professional so you can have the consultation and get the evaluation done to see exactly what you need to do to keep more is two different things. So we all want better, but we all don't want necessarily do better. And that book says, faith without works
It's dead.
is dead. And we all got faith. Oh man, Lord, I pray that my tax bill gonna get reduced. But you ain't picked up the phone to call the CPA yet. You haven't had a consultation yet to see what you can do to reduce the tax liability. So the Lord looking at you said, look here, man, I put the professionals in front of you. Matter of fact, you bumped into them at the barbershop. Matter of fact, you spoke to them at church. Matter of fact, you saw their name go across when you was riding down the freeway and you were listening to 94.9, and you said, man, but you didn't pick up the phone and call and take the initiative to have a conversation to start the planning and preparation to see what an action needs to be done in order to reduce your tax liability possible. So, we have to take the actual steps because they say when you know better, you do better. And our people perish due to lack of knowledge. So if you don't have the knowledge, that's no one's fault but yours because you're not seeking after the knowledge. So seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness, and all things will be added unto you. I tell folks all the time, I said, man, if you don't read no other book, read the Bible because it's got the answer to every question you need right there. And it's going to tell you right there, seek and you will find. Ask. You have not because what?
You
ask not. So we got to start doing some of these things and start putting some of these actions into actual principle. We got to start utilizing them and not just leaving them as words that are falling on deaf ears and just hoping and looking and saying and blaming God, saying, God, you didn't come to my rescue. And like, no. I sent you the raft to rescue yourself. You didn't get in the boat. You wanted me to pick you up out the water and put you in the boat. But I put the boat right next to you. You could have used your arms and grabbed it and pull yourself into the raft. We got to have some action to go along with our words. So, we must understand that, planning and preparation, that's not tax dodging. It's you are utilizing the written provisions that are in place to put yourself in a better position from a tax standpoint. So let me reiterate that. This is not tax dodging. It is a provision written plainly in the code. They said a long time ago, if you want to keep some away from black folks, what you want to do?
Put it
in the book. It's written in black and white. And we get a chance to look at it and review it and study it. And now you can even chat GPT it. You can Google it. We got so many different ways to access this information to it doesn't make any sense to not be utilizing the opportunities that are in front of us. So we have to understand that there are some invisible barriers that we're going to have to cross. We all understand and see the visible barriers because we have to pay for them. We have to do it. But that tax on their retirement account is invisible because we don't think about it until it actually gets there. And like you said, when you got that first paycheck and that that money was gone before you even got it. And I remember my first paycheck I got from Foot Locker. I had my first time working a large some hours was in the summer. And I got the job and it could only work odd hours here and there during the school year. But then the summer came and like, you know what? I got some good hours in 1 week. And I'm thinking, man, that check gonna be about $850. And I'm okay, that's a lot of money at 15. I'm like, man, when I get that check and it's, I'm saying, hold on, $555. I'm like, who is FICA? I'm too young. I don't got no Social Security. I'm too young for that. I'm not understanding all these different things that came out the check. And I'm like, hold on, I need the rest of my money. Something ain't right. I need me. This is not what I was expecting. But understanding that, okay, well, if I knew better, I would do better. Because, see, I had planned to spend $800, not the $500 that I received. Because you know how we do. We wrote that check before we got it.
Yeah.
We went around and we've already made plans for the money before we get the money. We done went and I done went and picked out what shoes I'm gonna get and what jewelry I'm gonna get and what at that time what Tommy Hilfiger outfit I'm finna buy and all this stuff. And then I look at them like, hold on, I gotta make some revisions to my plan. I can't afford that now. I gotta wait till the next paycheck. But now that I know, I can do a better job of planning for what's going on around me and what I'm going to receive. So we have to understand that and, understand that prior planning prevents poor performance. We don't want to be in a situation where, you've saved into your retirement accounts. And this has happened to me on way too many occasions, meeting with clients. And they've been saving their whole life in their retirement account. And all of a sudden they retired and they look up and they got $300,000, $400,000 in their retirement account. And they look at me and I say, Mr. Hamilton, how are we going to utilize this? I said, well, we got to plan for the taxes that's going to come out. They said, taxes? I got to pay taxes on it? Yeah. I said, well, you put the money in, you got a tax deduction for it, correct? You got a tax break on it. So you were able to write it off up front and it reduced your ordinary income by the amount that you put in up to a certain amount based on your age. I said, so when you pull the money back out, that's when the IRS is going to collect.
Yeah.
So it was you could pay now or pay later. You chose the pay later option. The question is, if you knew how much you was going to have to pay later, would you choose to do that or would you pay now? And a lot of people don't understand that there's opportunities to actually utilize a pay now structure.
Okay.
Those days are called Roth conversions. And, Roth conversions are, plainly put, it's an opportunity where you can take a qualified retirement account, an IRA account, and you can simply take the funds from the retirement account, the qualified retirement account, pay the taxes now at a rate that you know, and move those funds into a Roth IRA. So now that money grows tax-free. So the whole goal is to let me pay at a rate that I know versus waiting and paying at a rate that's unknown, that's probably going to increase more than likely. Because if debt is increasing, that means more than likely that the rate is going to increase. And a lot of times people don't realize that if you go back and look at the history of taxation in this country, our taxes right now are very favorable to what they used to be. There was a time when taxes were, way higher than they are right now. But see, we are creatures of habit of, we have recency bias. Just like when it comes to the mortgage interest rates right now. Everybody, oh man, rates are way too high. Rates are way too high. No. We had a brief moment in time that was very abnormal.
Yeah.
Where rates were at historic lows, that 2.5%, 3%. And there were a lot of people that utilized that time to purchase homes and refinance and were able to get locked in at that 3% rate, which is great, which you should have done and taken advantage of. But we didn't understand and we don't like to remember that that's not the norm. Rates now are probably between 6 and 7%. That is a normal rate environment. So we want to look at the rates as, man, rates are way too high. No. They're just not where they used to be.
Yeah.
But rates are actually in a pretty normal environment right now. But we want what we want when we want it, how we want it. And it don't work that way.
Yeah.
So having to understand that now, when we look at the tax code, if we go back to what taxes used to be in the 60s and 70s and even early 80s, it's like, well, you might have been paying double the taxes of what you're paying right now. But due to some of the things that went in and due to a Bill Clinton, for example, when he went in and he was able to reduce deficit and bring it down dramatically during his time frame in office, that gave us some favorable tax terms because we didn't have the same level of debt. Well, what came behind that? We had the war, remember?
Yeah.
Iraq. We had the Bushes. We just call them the Bushes. We had those years where now debt increased based on the things that were going on around us. We had the financial crisis that came based coming out of who? The second Bush. That created a lot of debt that had to be poured into the economy in order to stabilize the economy. We had to bail out certain companies. We gave out different things. So we had a stimulus package that had to come in COVID, where a lot of money was pumped into the economy. So there's been things that have happened that we have to look at that has put us in a situation where taxes probably have to get raised. It's going to be up to you to figure out if you can utilize a system to put you in a better situation, or you can let the system dictate the situation you in. See you back after a minute.
Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Wealth. And today we're talking about pay now or pay later. The thing about the now and later, think about the candy. You can eat some now, you can eat some later, right? You think about the finances, you can pay up front or you can pay later. But it's all up to you of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. But what truly determines that is, have you really sat down and talked to a good advisor? Do you have the correct knowledge to know what you need to do now and what you need to do later? Because proper planning allows you to do that, right? It tells you what you need to do now, what you need to do later, just based on, your money and where you align. But then also, when I think about faith, some people will do what they need to do now in terms of aligning their lives with God, and then just expect that I'm not going to have to do anything later because I've already done what I need to do now, right? I've confessed with my mouth and believed in my heart that Jesus is the Savior, and so I do that now. But then later, I don't read the Word. I don't connect to a church. I don't have any type of discipline, prayer life, worship life to make sure that I nurture what I did now, and I'm constantly taking care of it later. Or if I didn't do it now, then how long am I going to wait for the later? And oftentimes that's what happens with some of us, is that. And then for those of us that do it now and do it later, I think an important thing that I think we need to speak on with it is that there are some that are doing it now. There are some that are doing it later. They are taking care of things. They are aligning things correctly. And they have their finances set up to be able to leave a legacy to their children. We often talk about that Proverbs 13 and 22. A good man leaves inheritance to his children's children, but the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. Yes. And many of us are reaping the benefits of that. And then now we're striving to leave something for the next generation. But you can't leave something for the next generation based off opinions. Yes. You need some facts.
Absolutely.
You need a wealth of advisors. The Bible also talks about in Proverbs 15 that, when you are surrounded by good advisors, you can have success in things. And I think sometimes once we get the advice now, we feel as though I don't need to talk to the advisor later. I've set everything up, and to a degree, yes, some things will work well off autopilot, but as you stated, as you stated earlier, just based on who's in office. Yes. And what they do. That changes things of how the finances will work, right? As you stated earlier, we have favorable taxes right now, but what's changed is the cost of living. Yes. The higher borrowing costs. That's why money isn't going as long. There are increased prices for goods and services. There are stagnant wages right now, right? And there's a lower standard of living for the long term. So I think it's important that now, Will, if you can from your vantage point, talk to us about leaving that legacy is fine, but then also in addition to the financial legacy, what else do we need to leave and tell our children and our children's children to make sure that the wealth lasts both now and later?
Well, the biggest thing that I always go to obviously is, our people perish through the lack of knowledge. And, we preach it here. We will continue to preach it here, about the importance of working with professionals. And, I tell clients all the time, I say, look, I'm not a tax professional. I am a fiduciary advisor. I build a projection. The CPA handles the tax advice. The best outcomes happen when both on the same page, like in football. We have a situation where two guys running different plays out of the same huddle will lead to certain despair, usually for the quarterback. Me being a former left tackle, I know if I was running one play and the quarterback's running another, and I missed that block, it's gonna be trouble. So we got to make sure that we on the same page, and it's why I tell the people that come into the office, like, we have to have conversations. We have to have a plan. We have to have other professionals involved in the process, and you need to have other professionals involved in the process, because it's always good to have another set of eyes. Number one, you bring professionals together to work together. Your CPA and your financial advisor should know each other, because usually you're talking to one of them about the other in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Usually you're asking questions because it's natural. People go to CPAs and ask questions they really should be asking financial advisors, and people come to financial advisors all the time and ask me questions they should be asking CPAs. And I'm saying, well, did you ask your CPA that? Well, it should probably be a situation where me and your CPA are having a conversation together with you, so we can make sure that we all on the same page and that we know what we're supposed to be doing, and we're not giving advice outside of our realm of our profession. Because all too often, if we do work with a professional, we tend to give them maybe too much credit and credibility, as opposed to allowing them to just stay in their lane. For me, I keep it very simple. I don't do nothing I ain't paid, trained, and certified to do.
Yeah.
I'm a
Stay
financial
in your
advisor
lane.
all day, every day.
Yeah.
I don't provide legal advice. I don't provide tax advice. Do I have a level of understanding about both areas based on my experiences with clients and opportunities and things of that nature? Absolutely. I have a pretty good knowledge of the legal system and of the tax code, based on what I do professionally, and also how I individually have to utilize the tax code to do the very things that I'm telling my clients to do. So because I work with it so frequently and so often, I'm very aware and pretty astute of, the tax code and the legal system. But I still don't consider myself a tax professional, because I understand that the tax code is changing almost on a yearly basis. And I'm not reading the new tax code every time it come out, because I'm paying somebody to do that. Now, every time there's updates to laws and regulations, and there's new financial opportunities and investment opportunities that come about, well, I'm reading that on a consistent basis, because this is my profession.
Yeah.
It is my job to understand and know the opportunities and the investment vehicles that are available to the clients that I'm coming in contact with. So I need to keep myself abreast of those things. But I'm not keeping myself abreast of the legal changes to the law. I'm not keeping myself abreast of all the tax changes. But I am working with professionals, and I can pick up the phone and call a CPA to say, hey, you know what? How does this work? What changes or adjustments need to be made in order to put us in a better situation? And people say, well, why you worry about that if you're the financial advisor? I say, well, I want to be in a situation where I can advise not just you, but also myself. I gotta be a little bit selfish here too.
Yeah.
I don't want to just teach you how to create an inheritance for your children's children. I need to be able to do one for myself as well.
Right.
So I want to be able to help myself and help individuals better understand how to utilize the opportunities that are around us. So I can say, okay, well, why should you utilize a Roth conversion, or what does it produce? Well, if I have more tax-free money growing on the back end, that alleviates my child from having to be in a situation where they're inheriting money that's going to be taxed to them as ordinary income. Because see, what happens is a child of beneficiaries is going to inherit a lump sum of money.
Okay.
And it's usually going to come in the form of a check or nowadays more frequently a direct deposit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the previous company that the money is coming from is not going to operate as their CPA and give them tax advice.
Mm-hmm.
So if they don't have a CPA and they don't have a financial professional that they're talking to, they're going to inherit and receive money. That money is getting direct deposited to them. And I know this because I've lived this and seen people make this mistake. I've had clients walk in my office after they've received checks and deposit into their bank account, not understanding and knowing that this was money that came from an IRA or 401k account. And what does that mean for them?
Mm-hmm.
So unknowingly, your child inherits. You got 3 kids. Just say, I got 3 kids. You have $300,000 that's in your IRA that you saved from retirement. You pass away, that money goes to your kids.
Mm-hmm.
They get $100,000 a piece. All they see is what? $100,000.
Yeah.
They're not thinking to ask and understand. Oh, what is the classification of this money? What is the tax code and how it relates to this money?
Mm-hmm.
You know, is this income? Do I have to pay capital gain? What is the situation? All they know is they have $100,000. And I tell people all the time, decisions are made based on the individual's current financial predicament.
Mm.
If I have bills due and I see $100,000, the first thing I'm going to do is what? I need to pay these bills.
Yeah.
I need to get myself out of the hole that I may be in. Well, in reality, the first thing you should be doing is when the time you receive money is verifying, where did this money come from? How is this money going to be taxed? So if it came from a retirement account, all of a sudden, each of your 3 children has now inherited $100,000, which means they have now just added $100,000 in taxable income to their life. So let's just say your kids are making $60,000, and all of a sudden they inherit that extra money, but they unknowingly just get the money and deposit it in their bank account.
Mm-hmm.
So now their immediate income for the year has grown to $160,000. All of a sudden, they in a different tax bracket. So now, but they're unknowingly in a different tax bracket because there was no manual that came with this check. There was no plan in place that came with this check. It's just a check. So all they see is the money and what I can do with the money. So all of a sudden, they're not realizing they received $160,000, so they pay off the car and pay off the bills and pay off the credit card. And next thing you know, they put a down payment on the home. And next thing you know, New Year comes about. You know, February comes. Usually the tax documents don't go out to the late January, February. All of a sudden, they get a tax bill in the mail that says, "Hey, you know what? Your tax rate went up to 32% this year. We need 32% of $160,000." They looking like, hold on. What do you mean? Well, not only were they not aware of their new tax liability, they spent the money. So now I don't have the, $40,000 in taxes that I owe. Because I've used that money to pay off certain things, buy certain things, get rid of debt, which are all good things. Nothing wrong with what they did with the money.
Exactly.
Ideally, they did the right thing. But it turned out to be the wrong thing because they didn't have the information and knowledge, and you didn't leave them a plan and a roadmap as to how to utilize this money and what were going to be the cause and effects of receiving this money. So imagine now I receive some instructions along with this check. And my plan and my dad and my mom had a trust in place. And they left instructions, hey, you're going to receive this money, but this money is going to be qualified. It is taxable money. So we want to structure this so you take 10% a year over 10 years. So all of a sudden, instead of getting $100,000 at one time, you get $10,000. Well, that $10,000 added to your $60,000 base. Well, now your income tax bracket don't change for the year. You can take that 10 and you can invest it or pay off whatever you need. Then next year you get another 10 and another 10. You're still gonna get the same money. But because we just stretched it out and structured it, now they're going to receive a much greater value of the money. So out of $100,000, instead of them giving away 30,000 plus of that money, they can actually receive $10,000 to $15,000 more of that money. And that's a big difference. But when we know better, we usually do better. But this is why it's so important to have a plan, to have structure, and have strategy, because if I leave that, now the child knows, okay, well, I'm going to reinvest this. I'm going to make sure I put this money to work. Not only that, but it's giving them a head start and a leg up as to understanding how they want to structure their future for their kids. Because experience is always life's greatest teacher. So if I have the experience of inheriting qualified money, seeing that, you know what? The tax liability was pretty stiff. So I had to structure it in a way so to reduce my tax liability. Well, for my kids, I don't want to leave my kids in a high taxable position. How can I convert these assets into non-taxable? So maybe I utilize a Roth conversion strategy, understanding that I'm going to convert my taxable dollars now into non-taxable dollars, so my kids inherit their benefit tax-free. I'm going to pay the tax now at my rate, because I don't know what the rate will be by the time they receive it. Chances are it's going to be lower now than it is in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and bite the bullet and structure the plan and do it now, because now that leaves me in a situation where these assets are going to grow tax-free for the rest of my life. And once it transitions over to theirs, it doesn't affect their livelihood. You don't want them in a situation where they have to determine how they're going to move in their own lives and finances based off what they're receiving from you. You want to try to alleviate some of that additional stress and pressure. You want them to be able to move and function in a way where they're not sacrificing what they're doing for themselves because of what you didn't do for them. So we want to make sure that this education is being passed down, because in all actuality, that is actually the greatest gift. You know, the greatest gift that you can pass on to your child, of course, is the Lord, number one. But right behind that is going to be knowledge and information and structure. If you pass on those things to them, now they're in a better situation to make better decisions that leads to better outcomes for them. And that's how you affect your children's children when it comes to actual understanding and financial planning.
That's good. That's good. With Proverbs 8:12 says, our wisdom live together with good judgment, and I know where to discover knowledge and discernment. So having the wisdom, you know, when you have the wisdom of how the finances work, when you have that, when we as parents pass that down, as you said, and the children had an understanding that now they can make good judgment. They have an understanding of the code, and then we give them that, then they can also seek out the knowledge that they need at that present time to ensure that they care for the gifts that we are passing down to them, to make sure that they don't lose it all, that they don't that is not taken. Now, so the pay now, pay later strategy is all about wisdom, prudence, and planning. It's all about making wise choices, wise decisions, not being too emotional about things, but being knowledgeable about things, right? Because our emotions, whether happy or sad, afraid, you know, those things can drive us possibly to the wrong outcomes. But when we have wisdom, when we have prudence, when we have knowledge, then that's when we have discernment. And discernment helps us to know what financial advisor we need to speak with. What CPA is the one that we need to work with in this situation. It leads us to how we need to operate. So that's good, Wilbert. I think that is important for us as always, that as we structure ourselves and be disciplined in what we're striving to do, that we make sure that we pass that discipline on
Yes.
to our kids. And oftentimes parents don't want to force things, but I want to advise everybody that you need to force things, especially now, because when you think about it, you said, well, when we pay the taxes and we overpay the government, they don't give us back the interest that they made off of it. We are forced to do things because the government is a force.
Yes.
But we want you to submit to the force of all forces, and that's God Almighty. Force yourself to get the knowledge that you need. Force your children to listen to you. And whenever you invest properly in yourself and your kid, God said that his word will not return back void. So everything that you lay out before God will return back to you. So we want you to not just pay now or pay later, but make sure that you invest yourself in God now. Because if you invest in God now, then you're going to have a greater life later on. God bless you, and we'll see you on the next episode.